All right. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, and here we go. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool.
Sean, today we've got, what do we call it? Our the flight of persuasion.
Flight of persuasion. A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah. But here's our key headline, okay? We're going to tease you.
Okay.
This is our question for the day on this episode. We don't have any guests today, so we're going to be talking about the topic of will AI replace copywriters? Because we know we got a lot of copywriters who listen in.
Yeah.
And so this comes from an article, and I shared it with you. There's been some, actually a few articles recently on the topic of AI replacing lots of things, but copywriters being one of them.
Yep.
Really?
We'll see. Like, couldn't they really get the human element? That's what we'll kind of be talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we'll find out. We'll see what the numbers say. We've got some numbers to show. Yeah, we'll talk about that. And before we talk beer, we should probably talk about our sponsor.
That's right. We should.
Instead of waiting until the end of the show like we usually do.
You know what? And I actually did them justice this week, Sean. I actually put together a little bit of copy. I don't know how good AI could do a better job than this, but I'll read it from the top. So our sponsor this week is Craft Beer Club, the outstanding craft beers from the finest independent microbreweries in the U.S. of A. How's that, Sean?
I like it.
So that's it. So you can find them over at persuasionbythepint.com/craft beer. Hey, you know that craft beers have exploded in popularity over the past decade. So there are thousands of awesome craft beers being produced. One of the best ways to sample these unique beers is by letting the original Craft Beer Club do the legwork and tasting to bring you the best beer discoveries all over the country. And Sean, you got some sample goods.
Right? I do. I'm not going to be talking about them today, but starting next week, I'll have them.
Next week. Yeah, because you're putting together a little
the box
surprise.
The box came yesterday, so it's down on the kitchen counter. I'm going to do an unboxing video.
Awesome.
Take a look at what we got inside. Like, I know it's coming because they send you a list right before it ships. So I know it's coming, but still do an unboxing so people can see what it looks like, how it comes.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm excited to dive in there. And, you know, if you just think about like the different beers that I've had on the show being in Texas compared to what you're able to find.
Yeah.
And then multiply that to the whole country.
Right.
I mean, that's basically what Craft Beer Club does, right? They've got the whole country to deal with, and they can ship you all these craft beers from Texas and everywhere else. You know,
all the legwork for you.
Exactly.
Right? You're not running over to Total Wine or whatever your favorite place is looking. And, you know, if you're like me, I've gone through every single beer at Topside where I go to. So there's nothing left, you know, it's like, let's go in there occasionally. See, you guys got anything different? No.
You're like, dude, you bought 140 different beers. What do you want from us?
What do you want?
If it was wine, it'd be easy.
That's right.
But it's not. So
plenty of wine.
That's a different show. So,
all right.
It'd be like a political show. Whining and wine.
Yes, whining and more wine.
All right. So what do you got?
Okay, so today I had to do a double take on this one to really figure out what month it was, because this one is called, it sounds really good, but it's an Imperial Pumpkin Stout. So I'm thinking, aren't we a little ahead? So either this beer, this is a limited Southern Tier brewing company, Warlock, and it's an Imperial Pumpkin Stout. So either this thing's really old, or we've got to jump in
the gun there. Huh?
So I don't know. I just
they gotta buy the pumpkin spice before it goes. You know,
that's right.
It goes through the roof in price for Starbucks in September, October.
That's right. Everybody's lining up at their local Starbucks for the pumpkin spice.
Yeah,
pumpkin spice.
Yeah, the pumpkin spice commodities market is just going to go through the roof in the next 14 days here. So you got to get it done. It's like trading spaces, the orange juice.
That's right. Yeah.
You got to get the contracts before they peak. So.
That's right.
All right. Well,
good time to invest in pumpkins and spices.
Let me put on my old reading glasses here.
All right.
So I've got Gatekeeper. Mm-hmm. Actually, no, sorry, Bat Keeper, because we're in Austin. My bad. Bat Keeper. And this is a bourbon barrel ale, but it's not. I'm just totally screwing this up. Hold on. It's a stout aged in Jameson casks. So it's a bourbon. So it's a bourbon barrel type thing, but it's
Jameson. I love Jameson. Yes.
I was thinking bourbon barrel because that's the other one I was about to grab, but I grabbed this one instead because I'm saving the other one for next week when we have a special guest on.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's
this one
cool. Can't hold that up.
Yeah, it's like a
barrel. Yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like a barrel. It's called Bat Keeper because we have bats here in Austin. That's one of our tourist attractions is bats. Yeah, and then it's 9.5% alcohol by volume.
Okay. All right.
I've already had this one, so I can tell you it's good.
So it's good.
When Ryan came over last week, he and I had a beer on the porch on the rocking chairs. So yeah, it's good stuff. So let me pour it because it's kind of dark.
All right. So yours is not. What'd you say? 9 and
9.5.
9.5. Mine is 8.6.
Nice.
8.6.
That's a good healthy beer.
Yeah, it's a good imperial. So it's an imperial stout too.
Yeah.
So
it should be. We'll see. It should be pretty sweet. I would think. Not too bad.
Probably.
We'll see. So anyway, no head at all. Just a pour.
All right. Let's compare. Yeah, both pretty dark there. Yep. Hey man, you've got I mean, that thing's like flat. It's like that's like day old Coke.
Does kind of look like it.
All right.
Cheers.
You can't even see mine because this stupid camera. Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
there we go. Second. Ooh. I gotta say, Sean, this is making me look forward to October.
Yeah, really. Yeah, well, that's our season, right? I mean, for beers,
that's right.
We're more fall, winter beer guys. So,
well, this tastes like an October, right?
Does it?
That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, because it's not football season anymore. That's for sure. Not this year.
Not this year. It will be pumpkin imperial stout season.
All right, I like it. So pretty good then, right?
I'm trying to get the that initial taste. It's you obviously it does taste a little like a pumpkin spice, like you're getting a pumpkin spice latte at Starbucks.
Yeah,
but it fades away. But it's got a real good aftertaste, and it's not too sweet. So
somebody's going to come out with a pumpkin spice latte stout, right? It'll be a pumpkin spice.
I'm writing it down.
Milk stout. That would be basically the same thing.
Come October, I can only imagine the shelves will be full.
Absolutely.
All right, how about yours?
So mine's really good. It actually kind of goes towards like an imperial stout it's got a little sweetness to it.
So is that the one you gave? Did Ryan have that one too?
Yeah, he really liked it too.
All right.
So I would give this on our 1 to 5 pints. I would give this. I'd give it 4.5.
4.5. Ooh,
yeah, it's good.
That's a high one for you.
Yeah. I mean, you got the Jameson casks, you got the stout. I mean, it's got all the right things in it. So
yeah,
it's hard to go wrong. So yeah,
perfect.
It's good.
And where did you find that?
This was at the HEB, I think.
Okay.
No. This was at our Specs, which is a liquor store here.
Oh, okay.
It's one of the Austin. It's the biggest liquor store other than Total Wine in Austin, and there's more of them. So,
oh man, I'm really having a hard time.
Between a 4 and a 4.5, or like.
Yeah, I think I'm somewhere in between four and a half. It's definitely a 4. So I'm gonna give it like a 4.2.
All right.
Yeah, it's definitely
Still
worth
pretty good.
4.2. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. It's a good score.
Yes.
So
I'll enjoy this one. I got to remember this one come actual October.
Yeah.
When the pumpkins are out. So
yeah, tell them to put you some on order.
All right. So what about these robots, man? What are we gonna do?
Yeah,
taking over the world.
Yeah, I mean, Will Smith warned us about these things years ago in iRobot. Nobody would listen, and here we are.
That's right.
So
John Connor with Skynet tried to warn everybody. I mean,
yeah,
we don't listen.
We don't listen. The allure is too strong. Yeah. So you forwarded me an article from AWAI that Ed Gandia wrote, and in there, Ed was like, there's a lot of talk about AI. Is it going to displace workers? Which it is definitely going to displace workers, no doubt.
Yeah.
The question is like, what level is it just going to replace anybody that's got anything to do with, I mean, it's not just words or copy. Like AI is doing all kinds of things. Right. And I've been hearing for, 3 or 4 years. I don't remember if it was like Peter Diamandis or one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it was Joe Rogan. It's one of the bigger names. They were talking about 2 or 3 years ago that AI sales conversations were out closing like phone telesales. Mm-hmm. We're out closing regular salespeople.
Yeah.
And I can kind of believe that because the advantage AI has is that once something works, it can refine it. Yeah. As opposed to a salesperson, because they're human, they tend to try to reinvent the wheel. They get
trial
lazy.
and error. Yeah. I mean, they make mistakes along the way.
And make mistakes slower.
Yeah. That's because AI can make mistakes, but it can quickly rebound because of the it can adjust.
Yeah.
Adjust its own algorithm or whatever. So
so in this article he talks about according to Ad Age magazine, one of the biggest banks in the world, Chase, is replacing some of its copywriters with AI.
Yep.
So in a series of tests, AI technology outperformed Chase's human copywriters. And you made a good point. Like we have no idea like the level of copywriter Chase has internally.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, these aren't like Madison Avenue copywriters that Chase hired. It sounds like these are internal people.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've seen, I mean, I don't know, how hard is it to write an ad for the 0.25% CD that you're, like, are they writing the brochures that are out in the signage? I mean, we don't know. Chase's.
I mean, the first thing when I read this article that comes to mind is a bunch of, no offense, a bunch of, millennials in their mid-20s that are fresh out of college that are like sitting in a cubicle and they're saying, all right, get us something to work with.
Probably.
Or not in a cubicle anymore. They're sitting at home and.
So they hired Chase hired this company called Prosato, and I started looking it up. And it's, I mean, if you go to their home site, it's Prosato, Persado. Yeah. It talks about, words matter, unlock the power of words, but they use like 5 different inputs.
Yeah.
Emotional, descriptive, formatting, functional, CTA, and then positioning. And it takes all those 5 elements into account when it writes an ad or, a Facebook post or anything. And it's constantly testing and, try to get a 1% bump here to 2% bump here. That's the other thing is like AI doesn't care how small the increase is.
Yeah. Whereas
people, we we need to see kind of big jumps for it to really matter to us. I think that's just part of human nature. Takes a lot more discipline, I think, to get, 10 or 12, 1% increases in a row.
Sure.
Which cumulatively would probably be, I don't know the actual math, but like 25%, right? Because you're compounding on top of each other.
Right.
So I think that's another advantage AI has is they're okay. It's like it's like the robots that are trading on Wall Street, right? They're okay with like an eighth of a cent profit.
Yeah, of course.
As long as they do 1 billion of those transactions, they're fine.
That's right, because that certainly adds up.
Yeah, it's like, do you remember the Superman movie with Richard Pryor?
Oh man, yes, but it's been so long.
Like he found out that there was like rounding errors on the pennies for people's paychecks. And then he's in the accounting department. He's like, puts all the extra half pennies into his account.
Yep.
And then he drives up in a Ferrari the next day.
That's all it takes,
Yeah. So those pennies add up. So that's
it's like those Verizon bills you get with those like little hidden charges, like
14,000 charges. Yeah, your bill's $25 a line, but there's $62 a line in charges. Yeah, so I mean, like they're showing here on their site, and they don't talk a price. It's expensive when it says request a demo. Yeah. So it's pretty expensive.
Absolutely.
Software that says request a demo is not cheap. Right. But yeah, some of the case studies they showed are pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. They have, they're showing like a 66% increase in Facebook, a 39% in display, like Google Display, SMS, text, which I think is a great place for AI to practice, because that's a tough skill to develop, especially if you're a direct response copywriter. It's hard to do text because you're kind of used to writing longer, and text has got to be really kind of short and punchy.
Yeah.
So if you're not good at that, and they're getting 39% increases there, like just, of course, these are also their, it would be really cool to know if like AI actually wrote this page or if somebody else did. I'm going to book a demo and find out. Did your AI write this page, or did you hire somebody? That would be telling.
That would be telling.
But I was looking at this and I was like, so as a copywriter, I was looking at this and I was like, I don't know. If I had the money.
So as a copywriter, as a trained copywriter, do you think that copywriters, I'm not talking any copywriter, I'm talking like the top tier copywriters, let's say the top 10%. You think they're worried?
Nah.
About AI?
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
And here's a line that makes me, if I were a copywriter in the top 20 percentile in my field, here's a sentence that would make me not worry about AI. It says huge established brands are also better candidates for copywriting AI technology than other businesses.
Right.
And why is that? In other words, companies where brand itself is the main driver. So we've talked about this. All the big companies, Coca-Cola, Chase, you name it. All these huge multi-billion dollar companies, it's all about brand. Mm-hmm. So they're not really, you can call it writing copy, but it's really writing copy that supports their brand, which is different than writing, sales-driven copy on the internet where you're marketing out to, consumers, and you're writing, using a lot of the practices of copywriting that that you're supposed to use and to kind of engage the consumers out there. This is a little bit different, it feels different.
And branding has, a brand that's that big and that established and that old, that has that much history.
Right.
Like there's a data bank to work with that the AI can work with.
Absolutely.
And you have to have that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a new product, a startup product, a very niche product, you don't have probably enough of that data yet to really let AI do its thing. AI works best when it has lots of data to work with.
Yeah.
And it can improve on what's been working.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true with a lot of the advances we see in technology, right? Technology is really good at improving something. It's not as good at creating.
Right.
and we just haven't gotten there yet. I think we will in the next 10 years because the way stuff's advancing, and I think the logic that's available will continue to grow and increase, and because we're all posting so much stuff online, like there's reams of data.
Oh, sure.
For AI to scale, to go through and get better and better and better and better. It's kind of like the first GPSs that came out, right? I mean, you're lucky to get within 100 yards of where you're trying to go. Now, I mean, you can get within like 3 feet, like literally you can like walk, before you kind of had to drive, and then they start adding in walking paths and bus routes, and like it knows when you're at the bus stop, not across the street from it. And Uber, like you know which side of the street to be on when you call an Uber because like it shows you.
It's amazing.
And 10 years ago, like it wasn't there. So I do think it's going to continue, but I agree with you. It's going to be better for the bigger brands for now.
But let's think about this. Even the bigger brands, do you think a company like Apple would use AI? I don't
know.
It's just it would be interesting to know. Do you think? I mean, because their marketing has not been up to scale recently. But some of their past, I think, is some of the most creative advertisements, commercials that they used to put out. The main one being, we all think about is I'm a Mac, I'm a PC.
Right.
AI. I can't see AI being able to
come up with that. Right. Unless they start taking what copywriters do, right? So what copywriters, especially on that level of campaign, right? So a copywriter is gonna. Eugene Schwartz talked about this in a talk to Phillips Publishing 20, 30 years ago. And he was talking about how a copywriter needs to go see all the blockbuster movies that come out every week. He needs to be buying National Enquirer magazine or Us Weekly or whatever to find out what the populace. So if this company is not putting that kind of data into the AI machine to get a handle on pop culture, politics, science, like all these things that really good copywriters pull from for the big idea, the breakthrough idea, then it's going to have a hard time doing it. I think the other thing they talked about is like in the article here that Ed wrote, he says using AI to do a lot of grunt work of cranking out copy for hundreds of simpler products could make financial sense. Right. So if you think about it, if you need to put out, 5,000 Facebook ads variations,
sure,
that's a good job for AI because you could even have one person write it, plug it in the machine, and then it's kind of like the old article spinners, right? But better. And that was like the start of AI, right? Article spinners.
Oh, I remember those.
Right.
It's crazy.
But they suck. I mean,
they were terrible.
And even now
there were like 4 or 5 variations and they were all bad.
Yeah. Because they lost that, the colloquialisms, the flow of writing. Sure. And I do think AI is getting better and better at that. But it's not quite there yet. Right. No. So Ed says his sister works as a marketing director at a very large insurance company. Her team is charged with producing hundreds of pieces of collateral just for one division of the business. And they're not using AI yet, but they've been outsourcing a lot of the work to an agency out of India. The quality of the work from getting that agency it's just straightforward sales sheets, fact sheets. So you don't need that direct response style copy, right? You just need, you need to take the brand guidelines, the style guides that are in the brand books and rearrange some of those words and put in the facts and features and stuff and maybe a benefit or two. That's enough for those, especially when you're in the regulated industries, when you can't be as creative. You can't be super creative with Chase and Smith Barney and all those guys because they've got so many regulations. There's a very tight, that's why it is about images and colors and, the cost of a trade, those kind of things. But if you want to put a company on the map, you're going to need more, I think, more involved copy.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, there's so much data. You think about a company like Coca-Cola, so much established data on their, their demographics, the people that drink, that enjoy Coke, the different brands of Coke, all of that. Massive amount of data that can go into AI and start to use that. Not to mention all of their past campaigns and what's worked, and there's a lot to work with there.
Exactly.
But it's completely different from a company that's launching a new product from the beginning. I think that's a tougher challenge for AI.
Yeah. So what I'm gonna do this week is I'm gonna book a call with these people.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna record the demo, and we can maybe drop it somewhere
Cool.
on our site, or
That'd
we
be
can
awesome.
talk about it next week. But I'll do a Loom video while they're doing their video.
Sure.
To capture it. So yeah, I think that'd be good. But yeah, so I just like I think it's some of the stuff you do, writing that introductory email to get in front of the CEO. That's gonna be tough for AI to do. But now I absolutely believe in 5 to 10 years they could get there.
Sure.
I mean, it's just with processor speeds and language, adaptations. I mean, I look at what like Otter AI is doing, and granted, that's not creation again; it's copying.
Right.
But Otter AI, the transcription service, is crazy accurate, and I'm sure they're doing other stuff with those transcriptions. Like they're not just transcribing for free for nothing.
Right.
Like there's another use, and I think they're learning the patterns of speech and the colloquialisms of speech and group conversations and the dynamic between, because Otter AI, if you record a Zoom video, that's built into the transcription is the Otter. So, they're learning how to take a conversation like you and I are having and to see the back and forth so that they can process it for sales conversations for AI. Yeah. So, and it's kind of like, remember the CAPTCHA stuff that was super popular a few years ago? They're still around, but not as much.
Right.
But, the reason behind that was not security. Like that had nothing to do with it.
No.
Most people don't realize this, but that was to get the driverless technology to be able to read signs that were hard to read.
Sure.
To be able to read addresses, to be able to read stoplights, to be able to read, is that a car? Is that a person? Or is that a whatever?
Yeah.
So it was training the AI. Humans were training the AI that will eventually replace them.
Yep.
We do not learn.
All
the movies have warned us.
How many sequels of Terminator have we watched and still not learned? I mean, come on.
Yeah. So I'm not worried yet. But I think it's definitely a matter of time before this stuff definitely kicks in.
I do, I think in a lot of data driven fields, where you're marketing a lot, because a lot of what I do in sales and marketing to engineers, there is some aspects of AI that will be, I can see that being incorporated because a lot of it's, you're providing data driven analysis to support your sales and marketing. So AI will come in handy, but I don't think it can. I think it's going to have to be integrated into the already personal approach and not just be that alone. Right.
Yeah. And I think it'll take over a lot of that lower level stuff. Like that's where technology usually starts.
Yep.
It's like robots pretty much build, Toyotas, but Ferrari.
Sorry.
Swallow that wrong.
Yeah.
But Ferraris, Rolls-Royce, Aston Martins, a lot of those are still handmade.
Right.
So
absolutely.
There's pieces that are still robotic and things like that, but you can see the difference when you go up in level of quality and stuff. Like you're still not using robots and machines and things. There's just something about the human touch that is so
higher perceived value. Perceived value is attributed to that. So, I think there's always been a fear. I mean, you look all the way back to the industrialization of automation,
Yeah.
Automobile manufacturing. People are afraid, oh, God, this is going to kill the assembly line. Well, yeah, it displaced, some workers, but it opened up opportunities for other workers, who's going to
That's the
service
thing.
those.
And I can't remember who wrote it, but there's a good piece about new technology definitely like replaces old things, like the automobile got rid of the car, but it also brought on mechanics and machinists and like all the different parts. Like all you need for a horse and buggy is like a blacksmith and somebody who can feed and water the horse, like maybe a woodcrafter, I guess, for the buggy. Maybe three. So it's maybe 3 or 4 jobs.
Yep.
But you start building a complex automobile, especially today, like you need software engineers, you need designers, you need sheet metal guys, you need somebody's got to fix the robots when they go down, like all this stuff. And it actually gets exponential. The jobs that are needed, they just change.
Yeah.
And
it really is cool when you walk in. Cause when I visit, like automation, like automobile OEMs, and I go in there and I see people literally, sometimes I think to myself, 100 years ago, people would be working their rear end off and sweating and just killing themselves in this plant. But I see guys walking around with like a little remote control that's moving a huge robot arm, that's moving a huge, a massive die for a machine that's molding a part. I mean, this thing's probably like, probably 50 tons. Yeah. And they're just like walking under it with a remote control, and this huge arm is just moving it as they automate it and just move it. And it's just one guy by himself just moving it down the line, and they have a small essential crew compared to what, 100 years ago, you need people to, work and finagle that thing down and use all sorts of equipment and stuff to move that in. Nowadays, it's amazing. So
but somewhere down the line, or upstream, I guess, technically in that speak, upstream, somebody's making
absolutely
all the stuff that he's operating, right? Somebody's making the key.
That's right.
The pad that he's working with, iPad or whatever.
Yeah.
Somebody else is making the hoist. There's a welder that's welding the frame that travels on.
And there's a whole bunch of guys just standing around literally that are programmers, and they're like, oh, you need me to reprogram this? Okay. It goes in, like, spends like 10 minutes, and then he's basically done until they need him again. Yeah. So it's like, it's increased there's a need for more people that do other things, but their work is so much easier. I mean, they're like, okay, I'll just kind of stand around, and when I'm needed, I'm needed. And eventually I think that'll get to the point where they won't need to be there in person, as time goes. We're seeing a lot of that today. So,
yeah. And then there's other industries that are just, like right now, your kids that, that's a good age to they need to be thinking about what are they going to do for work.
Yep.
And the secure stuff is the old stuff, right? Plumbers, welders, electricians.
That's right.
Like you can't AI that stuff.
No, you can't.
And I think there's going to be a huge resurgence in trades over the next 10, 15 years, because college has lost its value. Like, unless you want to be a doctor, lawyer, or something like that requires that certification. Trade school is actually a much better return on investment right now. So, and I think anything that requires that kind of hands-on trade, and copy has that to a degree, marketing has that to a degree.
Yeah.
And also when you get higher interpersonal skills, that's going to be safer longer.
Sure.
Until AI gets really good.
Yeah.
So any type of one-to-one sales, that kind of stuff is, now if you're doing just mass sales and you're selling something pretty cheap, that's like term life insurance. I could see a computer selling that just as well as a salesperson.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because people are shopping for that.
Sure.
But if you want to start selling universal life, and all the things that it can do, that requires a little bit different presentation, a little bit different person to sell that.
Yeah.
So, you had something else in a book you wanted to cover.
Yeah. So, we'll maybe cover some of these, next week, cause we've hit 30 minutes, and we're going to cut it short a little bit, but just going to tease people for next week.
All right. So we can go over this with our guest next week.
Yes.
He would have some good.
Do you want to tease that for next week? Or do you want to kind of leave
say
that
this guy worked directly with Gary Halbert. Like sat across a desk from him in, I think, Costa Rica. Worked shoulder to shoulder, face to face with Gary Halbert. Has a very successful print newsletter business and has for a long time. So he's in that world of, he is a copywriter, but he's also, he's been in the physical products business, with the supplements. So he was doing ads for supplements back when you had to buy a $30,000 full page magazine spread.
Wow.
And hope your copy converted.
Huge risk there.
And you had to buy that space like 3 months ahead of time.
Oh yeah.
So like, it's not this instant, put your credit card in Facebook and get, none
of this AI stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Everybody's like, put $1 in, get $3 back. Right, and I mean, theoretically you can do that. It's not as easy as people make it sound, but imagine like putting out 30 grand for one pop
upfront. Yeah. Just
upfront,
exactly.
Non-refundable, no testing really. It's like,
and that's a huge amount of, you think about that kind of pressure. Like, it's sink or swim. Right?
And that's why that copy, I think, for those types of things stood the test of time, and why we still talk about them. Because now it's so easy to just throw something up, and if it doesn't work, you take it down, you kill it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's a lot lazier now. They're like,
there's no risk. The risk is not as great. So
you can control the risk a lot more now than you could then. So so that guy will be on.
Guy. Yeah. No names, but
we're going to keep
he did work with Gary Halbert. That's enough said. That's all you had to say, really. Yeah. So here's the book. So it's funny. I was listening to, I pulled up this book. I've had this book for probably like 10 years, and it's been on my bookshelf, and I refer back to it from time to time. But I was listening to our friend Ben, his podcast, because I tune in every now and then to his Facebook ads with a twang, and
great name.
He was going through a series. He's going through a series recently on Instagram ads, and that's kind of why I tuned in. And he was going through that, but he brought up this book as his go-to resource, and I'm thought, I've got that book, and I used to read that thing cover to cover. So, but it's been a while, so I actually pulled it off the shelf, and I started going through it last week. There's a really good chapter in it that's worth, to me, it's worth the book in and of itself.
Just one good chapter.
Just one chapter. Yeah. I mean, that's all there's. I mean, I've combed through this book, and there's just one chapter that's worth it.
We're not going to tell you which one, so you have to figure it out for yourself.
I'm not going to give you the chapter number, but it has to do with psychological triggers. So and I'm not going to go through each one of these. We can spend some time next week. There's a whole bunch of them. There's probably there's 20 or 30 psychological triggers. Some of these are,
it's got to be like 37. It can't be 30, 33.
You're right. It's not 32. An even. Yeah, exactly. But some of these are obvious, but one that stands out to me is involvement. And that's kind of like this whole discussion of AI, giving the person that you're writing to a feeling of involvement. I don't see, when I'm going through that, and that's one of the first psychological triggers in writing copy, is involving your person, like painting a picture, that we talk about all the time, like imagine if, Sean.
Yep.
That's why I have a hard time with AI, thinking that AI is going to replace that. And it could. I'm not saying, I mean, the technology's, we're in the early stages, but it's still hard to imagine an AI, artificial intelligence, that's painting basically putting that your reader, in the position of that ownership, and making them feel as if they're a part of the process. Because to me, that takes a skill set of understanding your person, the reader, the person that you're writing to or that you're talking to, and having that understanding of them to really paint that picture in the first place. So I don't know what your take.
Yeah, let me show you an email I wrote this week that kind of fits. I can't screen share on here because you're the. Oh yeah, I can. Hold on.
You should be able to.
Which one is it? That one. Got 3 screens, so I never know which. I think you have to let me in the show.
Oh, what? Share. Let's see. Share screen. How do I do that?
I don't know.
Oh, there you go. I see it.
There you are. Yeah. So let me make this a little bigger. So this is kind of that involvement you're talking about, I think. So let me just, that looks good. Right. So if you're watching us on the YouTubes or Facebook Lives or whatever, this is an email I wrote this week for a client, local, regional company that does granite countertops, and installs those in people's homes, businesses, things like that. Right. So like in your area, Jonathan, these would be like Smoky Mountain tops, but
absolutely.
These guys are up kind of Indiana, Louisville, that kind of area. So I was like, all right, so we need to talk to these people. Like, what's the narrative going on in their head? What's the current event? Like that kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, people have been stuck at home for a while.
Sure.
So, that's kind of stuff. So that's the kind of stuff I don't know if AI can do and how it does that. That's why I was talking about, you have to be up on current events. You have to be up on like, what's the mood right now of the country. And like I said, I have no doubt it'll get there. I just don't know if it's there yet. So this is that involvement, like tired of staring at each other yet. Right. So this was my original like idea, locked up staring at those old counters, but that was like too obvious. Right. It was like too much about counters. So I was like, how can I make that a little bit more vague, a little bit more enticing? So I said, tired of staring at each other yet. And knowing that I was going to be talking about the counters staring.
Sure.
Right. So, but I kept it a little bit vague, but then I was like, well, maybe I should have people staring at each other. So I just did, hey, name, how are you doing? It's been a weird few months, hasn't it? And now school is starting back. Sort of, maybe. Anyway, since this whole lockdown, stay at home deal started, we've all been spending a lot more time staring at each other. And you may have begun to notice some things you hadn't noticed before. Things like how many pairs of sweatpants, gym shorts, leggings, and t-shirts you and your family own, or how often some wear the same ones. Or how much time you spend in your kitchen now that restaurants are either closed or more hassle than it's worth. Speaking of kitchens, have you been staring at your counters, wondering if it's finally time to upgrade them to the latest materials like quartz and granite, both in the latest colors? If so, I'm glad you opened this email today. So it's a very one-to-one, very like they can see like, I see my husband's wearing sweatpants every day, or the same ones every day. Like that kind of humor is really hard to pull off. Like,
absolutely,
without that human element, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Because what you've incorporated into that is like, people can relate to current events, stuck at home, kids uncertain about school right now. Kind of on the fence. Some do, some are, some aren't.
Right.
But I mean, it's very timely.
Yeah. And like this email is going out to they have about 8 stores across a pretty big, very varied region, where some schools are starting, some aren't. Like, so I had to be able to take all that into account and then segue into the actual business talk, which is about kitchens and upgrading counters and it's, hey, we received a new selection of stone, gorgeous stuff, and I'd love for you to have first dibs on it for your kitchen, or bath or bar or hearth. Right, give them some ideas. After all, you've probably been spending quite a bit more time in your kitchen than ever before. So might as well be a place you love hanging out, right?
Absolutely.
And like these little things, like getting them actually in the
questioning.
And getting them nodding their head. Yeah, that sounds right. However, if it's not the place in your home you love to gather and entertain, because what do you see on every episode of HGTV? Well, we want a place to entertain, right? So I'm using that language. Gather is like the family language, Like these words are chosen, right? So gather is like this family. You gather around the hearth, you gather around the kitchen, heart of the home, and then entertain. Like
that's young. It's like young people.
It's also the aspirational part. Like everybody wants a home that they could entertain in,
because
nobody does. Hardly anybody does.
Right.
But every single episode of HGTV, they're like, "Oh, this would be a great entertaining space."
Yeah.
Haven't had anybody over in 16 years, but if I did, this is
they can imagine it. Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean,
and they think the house is going to be the difference.
Right.
Which it's not. It's going to be sending out invitations and asking people to come over.
Sure.
Then let us help. You can stop by any of our locations, blah, blah, blah. Get a free estimate on our website. So, ready to stop staring at those counters that are just okay and ready to fall in love with your kitchen again. Yeah. Stop by and see the difference, blah, blah, blah. That's just good. Super easy. Like, but there's so many nuances in that. And it looks super easy to write, but that took me, it took me like 2 hours to write, even though it's, not that many words,
right.
To get the nuance and all that kind of stuff in it. And I probably thought about it for 2 or 3 days before that, just kind of, letting it bounce around in my head a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think that's,
I just don't see, maybe we're wrong. I just don't see AI writing something like
maybe
that.
It's wishful. Maybe it's wishful thinking.
Yeah, could be. But yeah, no, I want to. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I think if you had AI and you could hire top level copywriters to give them stuff to work off of, it could accelerate that process.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the difference. And I do know somebody that's doing that with a copywriting tool, piece of software.
Sure.
Where he's got, B and A level copywriters programming the structure, and then the AI kind of spins it and does its thing with it. So it is coming, and he's a A level copywriter himself.
Sure.
And he sees the writing on the wall that this is going to happen no matter what. So he's going to be on the AI side of it and be making money on the AI side of it.
Yeah.
It is going to happen.
It's going to, exactly. It's going to happen. To what degree, we don't know, but
it'll be like anything else. Like there's still going to be, but you're going to have to be really good to battle the AI, right? So you're going to have to be you can buy a pair of shoes, or you can buy a pair of handmade Italian shoes still from a cobblesmith or whatever they're called, cobbler. Those guys are still out there. Just like a hand-tailored suit is still out there. So the good news is, if you get really good at the skill of copy or anything else that AI could replace, you'll actually be able to command higher fees.
Absolutely.
It'll become almost artwork.
Right.
So I think that's good.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think it drives I think what you're saying is it drives the people that are exceptional at this, drives their value up even more. So, and I think that's a good thing. Because there's so many people that jump into copywriting. You see it. I mean, unfortunately, you get on places like Fiverr, where you, and I would never recommend hiring somebody off of Fiverr, but unfortunately there's people that advertise their services on places like Fiverr, to get started. And, I think I think something like this is not going to be good for them.
Right.
It's going to be great for guys like you and a lot of the higher tier copywriters out there, because it's going to create new opportunities. So,
right. Yep, for sure.
All right. Yeah, I'd love to hear that interview. We'll have to incorporate that get a chance. So,
yeah, we'll do that. All right, is that it? We're gonna wrap there.
Yeah, I think so. We'll come back to triggers next week on a separate episode. Maybe we can actually throw it around with our guest. I'm not going to mention names, but it's going to be a good one. So we can discuss that next week.
That'll be good. That'll give us a jumping off point. And he's got a book we can talk about. He's got some cool stuff, but
awesome. Looking forward to it.
Mainly we'll talk shop like we usually do. So
sounds good. All right, guys, you can find us over at persuasionbythepint.com. You can find us on all of your podcast platforms, whatever you listen to. You can also find our Facebook group over at facebook.com/groups/persuasion by the pint. And as always, thanks for listening. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.
See ya.
All right.